Just very quickly, I'm Jay LeCoque, the executive chairman of SourceBio. Got a great team. Tony Radcliffe, our CFO, also has significant experience with life science companies, and Russell Wheatcroft, our COO, has significant experience in molecular diagnostics, commercial enterprises, and is a very important part of the team. My experience is mostly life science companies listed in the UK. And I think it's most applicable to Source is my experience running SBI International from 2000 onward, when we really sort of saved the business and then ended up selling to Charles River for a significant value for shareholders. So I'll just quickly go through that. Executive summary of the business. We are a leading provider of laboratory services to blue chip pharma, NHS hospitals, with a revenue of our 4 business units of 50.7 million in 2020. Infectious disease came in strongly at 34.5, and I think the last time we were together, we were just sort of starting this business. Healthcare diagnostics was impacted by COVID. I'll get into that in a minute. Genomics actually came back fairly well, considering we lost Q2. And stability storage, great business, recurring revenues, was impacted a bit. I'll talk about that in a minute as well. But 2020 was a year of dramatic growth. Revenues up significantly, adjusted EBITDA up to 14.2 versus 3 million in 2019. We did do an IPO on AIM in October at 162p, which allowed us to more quickly ramp up our COVID testing, which we did, and we are now looking at other avenues of growth. Before the IPO and after the IPO, we have invested significantly in our laboratories and equipment, which makes us very well positioned for future growth. And we have a very strong list and growing list of blue chip clients, and that has also been expanded with our COVID offering. So just a very quick financial highlight: strong operating performance. Revenues up 139% to 50.7. Gross profit up 135% to 20.5. Adjusted EBITDA increased significantly to 14.2 million. Adjusted EPS increased nearly 5-fold to 19.8p per share versus 1.7 prior. Cash generated from operations up to 6.4 versus 2.9. Can you still hear me, Roland?
Yes, Jay, we can hear you and see you. It's perfect.
Okay, sorry, I've got a little warning there. We've transformed the balance sheet. As you know, we closed cash at 8.4 at the end of the year versus 1.2. Debt-free balance sheet now. Borrowings of 90.59 are gone, eliminated with the IPO and the debt restructure. Just a very quick overview of infectious disease testing, and I want to spend more time getting into this market in particular. But as I mentioned before, business unit revenues 34.5. When we went public, and I think when we did the original note, we talked about this being almost a one and done. Everybody saw the spike in maybe Q1 of 2021, and it was going to go down. We obviously know now that's not going to be the case. There's a much longer term potential, and we're planning to go and exploit that the best we can. We continue to support our healthcare clients, DHSC, NHS, but we are now focusing on travel, sports, employers who want certainty on testing. We're expanding our testing beyond PCR to include LAMPOR, rapid antigen, pipeline of other offerings. We do have a quantifiable antibody test that we have validated. And we are building mobile labs, vans and trailers, and you can see at the bottom this picture. You've got one on the left and one in the middle. Excuse me. Is an example of some of the trailers that we're going to be putting out into the field. In fact, we have them out right now. We've also expanded our testing solutions into the United States, and that's a picture of our San Diego facility. That facility is going to start with about 2,000 tests a day. We can get to 5 if we need to, but we're really just planning on the 2 for this coming year. The current market dynamics. This is sort of an update on where we were when we went public. We're now managing a large portion of the DHSC mobile labs. In fact, news even from yesterday, they are going to discontinue one of the programs with Oxford Nanopore. We are going to see if we can get those mobile labs and put them to use in some of our other applications. We continue to be a leading partner for the NHS and private hospitals for testing staff and patients. We are partnered with a high street pharmacy chain that is gearing up for lifted travel restrictions. The 2 and 8 testing, the Fit to Fly. I can't say who it is, but it's a very well-known brand in the UK. We will be offering both in-store testing, and we will be doing online offering of tests where you will buy them from this pharmacy chain. They will come to us. We will do the testing and give the results back to the consumer. As I mentioned, we're focusing on travel, fit to fly. Securing the RFU contract, Rugby Football Union is just an example of the need for on-site sport testing and event testing. We're going to be part of that. PCR is going to remain the gold standard, and you can see from the news that when you travel or when you do anything that's critical to get a yes or no and an absolute positive or negative, PCR remains the gold standard. However, I wanted to point out this graph on the right here. You can see the blue line is PCR testing, so it's significantly up, and it's still moving up, and it's up and down, but it's relatively strong. The gray line is lateral flow testing, which are these rapid antigen tests. Those are being increasingly used by the government for just sort of mass screening. And although they've just made this announcement a few weeks ago about giving everyone in the UK 2 tests if they'd like them, that's sort of old inventory of some old tests they bought a while. It might even be a shelf life issue. There's newer technology coming out that makes these lateral flow tests much more accurate from a sensitivity perspective, and we're working on offering that relatively soon with one in particular provider that's got a very, very good test. And we'll, without overselling it, we're looking at developing that market as well. So we wouldn't only be PCR, we'd be taking advantage of all the testing that's being done. So outlook and opportunities. I mentioned this before that we see this as more of a longer term testing need. And interestingly, Boston Consulting Group just did a study in January of 21, suggesting the demand for testing will remain high even after widespread vaccine distribution. That the testing is peaking late 21, early 22, but continued need for testing into 23 and 24. That's what the study says. We're planning on this type of scenario, and if it does wind down earlier, that's fine, but we certainly don't want to miss an opportunity to continue testing if we can do it. I did mention the broader opportunities. This is a bit repetitive on the other slides, so in the interest of time, I won't go into too much detail. We do offer whole genome sequencing, which now the government wants everyone to test a positive if you get one in your 2 and 8 day testing and you're fit to fly. We are one of the few labs that's capable of doing that. Other technologies are under evaluation. The SeroClear from EKF is a quantitative antibody test. We have that validated. Antibody testing has not taken off as well as we had assumed it might in the UK. It still could once the vaccine rollout continues. So we are ready to go if that test becomes a strong customer need. Our accreditation, UCAS 15189 ISO accreditation, is very unique in the market. There's a few labs, but most labs don't have that, and that is something that increasingly people want to see as an accredited lab to give them high quality results. We talked about the move into the US. And then another thing I wanted to highlight here is respiratory disease panels. We are looking at developing a test that not only tests for COVID, but different types of flus and other respiratory illnesses in one test. And we've even heard from one of our big private hospitals that they believe that's where the market's going, is that they won't just be testing for COVID, it'll be a panel test. There are some in development right now. There's a few we're working on, but that's another area where it would be more of a sustainable business model, because the feeling is that COVID just isn't necessarily going away. It'll be contained, but if the new variants keep coming, you're going to want to keep testing for it. So we're going to be there with an offering if that is the case. Healthcare diagnostics. This is our cancer screening business, effectively. It's a business unit that brought in 4.4 this year, but 7.3 last year. And in 2019, this business had been growing at 40% per year for the 2 prior years and 35% the year before that. The growth is coming from a shortage of UK pathologists and the continuing trend to outsource pathology services to companies like Source. We're one of the lead providers. And just to give you an idea of what it is we do, this graphic on the right sort of gives you an idea. Is that if you need a tissue sample to see if you've got cancer, either pre-op or post-op, the NHS or private hospitals will send that sample to Source. We will process it up, put it onto a slide, send it to one of our pathologists, who will then take the slides, make a diagnosis, send it back to us. We create a report and send it back to the hospital or a private hospital. That is an outsourced service, but it's a very high skilled outsourced service. And one thing that's changed since the prior presentation when we were going public is we've now validated our Philips digital pathology system, which means that when we process a slide in Nottingham, we don't have to cut it up and put it on a slide and send it to the pathologist. We're digitizing that image and sending the digitized image to the pathologist. So it's going to reduce turnaround times. In some ways, it's going to free up pathologists' times to focus on more high-end or more high complex cases, because there is an AI capability with a digital system that screens out some of the baser cases. So we're definitely moving ahead with getting most of our prolific pathologists onto digital, and that, certainly in 21, and we're looking even in 22 to bring on more and grow the business from there. I mentioned about being a lead partner. There's also, so growth was happening before the pandemic. We were looking at this business growing at 40% a year. Now you've got this increased potential for all these elective surgeries that have been backlogged and put on hold. Those are now coming back into the system. In fact, I can tell you that cellular pathology now is running fairly well, even ahead of our initial forecasts. It's not quite at pre-pandemic levels, but it's close. And we think that's even going to accelerate once, we can get more of these elective surgeries to come back online. There's been, there's millions of people waiting for cancer surgeries, and we're going to be ready to go when that happens. In fact, the NHS has told us to be ready for a tsunami of cases. So we're getting ready for that. We have a personalized medicine business. I won't spend too much time on that, but this is a very important part of Source. And we're going to continue to focus and grow this business. Genomics, just very quickly, 4.2 versus 4.5 last year. Considering that we had a terrible Q2 based on the pandemic, when all the universities stopped research, many people sent everyone home. We really had, not a strong Q2, and we still came in at 4.2. We're pretty pleased to see that. The revenue mix has shifted more towards next generation sequencing, which is whole genome sequencing, versus Sanger sequencing, which is just sequencing one strand at a time. I won't get overly complex here. We've implemented this NovaSeq system from Illumina that is an NGS system, and it has really changed our mix to focus more on the larger and repeat projects, the higher complexity cases that, one, command a premium, and two, are just much more profitable for us as a business. We've upgraded the commercial sales team. That can't be understated or overstated, and we are looking forward to having that team continue to build the business. Stability storage was, it's 6.9 million versus 8 last year. We did not see this being impacted dramatically, but we did see a slowdown in our US business, where we moved our facility from LA to San Diego. And in the middle of that was the pandemic, and San Diego had a serious lockdown. And so many of our customers from LA were unable to visit our San Diego facility to audit that facility. So we didn't move some of their contracted products to our new facility. We are now working to get the business back, and so I'm expecting strong growth out of San Diego this coming year. We also couldn't have people travel during the pandemic. You couldn't do service and installations. People were locked down, and capital, quite frankly, was put on hold. The CapEx spending was way down. That seems to be coming back. We're looking forward to this business going forward to be growing at a much better level than obviously last year. But historically, this business is, high single digits, low double digit growth, but very profitable, 80% margins, recurring revenue business. Just a revenue summary of everything. Not going to spend too much time on this. I did want to mention that you've got the infectious disease testing. You've got healthcare diagnostics, which was impacted fairly significantly. Genomics, not too bad. Stability storage. When you look at the base business and you look at healthcare, genomics, and stability, we lost about 4.2 million versus prior year. I didn't say this earlier, but we set up infectious disease as a hedge against the decline in healthcare diagnostics. We were able to leverage our accreditations with the NHS and the DHSC to offer a COVID testing service. That brought in 34.4 million. So if you look at it from that perspective, it was an 8 times payback on the hedge versus what we were trying to do to save healthcare diagnostics. Much more successful than we thought it was going to be. Just wanted to point that out. On the EPS, I won't go through this whole thing again. I wanted to point out revenues and gross margins. We kept them at 40%, which was not easy to do. And we're growing the business at this quick of a rate. If you look at the operating expenses, you're looking at a 5.6 million pound OpEx with 21 million. You're looking at 6.2 with 50.7 million. We were able to leverage the facility and the IT and the infrastructure and the quality assurance in a way that we were very pleased to be able to do. And a lot of people worked very hard, but that's what happened with we were able to just effectively leverage our operating capabilities to drive the EBITDA as strongly as we did versus last year. EPS, I think I mentioned it was 19.8 versus 1.7 adjusted EPS. Libram had us at 13.5, so we achieved that or overachieved that as well. So summary and outlook. 2020 was a transformational year for the business. Infectious disease business unit was established. IPO was completed, strong growth in revenues, earnings, and cash. We've got an unprecedented opportunity to expand our business with COVID-19. And I think one thing I did want to point out, although we're not focusing on it much right now, is that what we are generating is, as I mentioned before, is cash. And we intend to use that cash to start supporting the base business growth. So for example, we're looking at acquiring business in healthcare diagnostics, possibly genomics, but we want to make sure that we utilize the cash we're generating to further augment the growth of the base business, because we all know COVID won't be here forever. Having said that, all of our markets are rapidly growing. I think the cell path business in particular is one we want to take a look at. We are building our international reach, UK, Ireland, and the US, very strong margins with high barriers to entry considering our accreditations. Strong debt-free balance sheet, capable of supporting future growth, organic and acquisitions. And trading in early months of 21 has been solid. Having said that, I will say that our pipeline looking into H2, with the result of travel, with a caveat there, is looking very strong. And without overselling I just want to say we're looking forward to a very strong H2 if things develop the way we think they're going to be developing, and that could continue into 22. So that's all I've got for the presentation. Sorry if I went through this quickly, but I know we've got a time limit.
So tackling them as they came in. Do you have any issues with late or non-payments by the NHS? Noted a recent announcement by Abingdon that they haven't been paid for test services.
That's a very good question. The answer to that is we have had, and we've recently been paid a fairly significant amount. And we've got another one that's coming due that we're sort of expecting a long turnaround. But no, we are getting paid. It's just, it takes a little bit longer. There was some new software put into the DHSC. It's just that's happened. You know, just it's not a bad debt. It's just it's a long-term collectible. In some instances.
Next up, what is your view of the Cantaro quantitative antibody test?
It's a quantitative antibody test, probably similar to SeroClear. I don't know how effective that's actually been. And to be honest with you, we're keeping an eye on that market, as I said. And if we see enough demand, we will launch our test into the market. We think our test is better than any test that's out there. Obviously, I would say that. But we just simply don't see the demand right now for an antibody test in the way we're seeing a demand for PCR rapid antigen tests. And so we're gonna go with the most volume if we can.
Okay. And I don't know if you've given or there's been any forecasts given yet, but it says in the question, how many COVID tests do you anticipate will be added via the high street pharmacy chain after July? And what's your anticipated testing numbers per day, per month going forward, 21, 22, if you're looking that far ahead? Can you just kind of talk to that? I think I've got
to be careful on what I communicate here. I will say that we are expecting significant volume from the high street pharmacy chain. We're also expecting significant volume from some travel partners that we just, even today, we got a note from someone talking about significant volume. So I'd rather not get into numbers because then, you know, Lieberman's going to want to redo the note. I'd rather not have that happen. But we are, you know, H2 could be a very significant business opportunity for Source, both in Nottingham, where our main lab is, but also these mobile units we have around the UK. Those are also fairly significant.
What's the revenue split? UK international, UK Ireland, US.
UK is 85% of the revenue. US is you know close, you know, is 2. Ireland's probably 3, but we are expecting to see the US business grow considerably going forward, especially if we get this COVID business up and running. It's going to give us opportunities to get more active in the market.
Okay, next one. How close do you think the enhanced LFT is to formal government approval? I.e., when do you expect that it will be in the market and likely generating material revenues for SBI?
Well, that's another good question. I wish I could determine the Porton Down priority list. I will tell you that we are getting some very good signals from Porton Down. In fact, one of them has been through Porton Down. So yeah, I would expect it needs to be soon, without putting a date on it.
Okay, next question. It can be very difficult to make money in cellular pathology. There's lots of competition and it's very labor intensive. 2 million NHS pathologists, in most cases sorted locally. I guess this question, how do you make money in cellular pathology? I think, how difficult is it to make money in cellular pathology?
Well, we're making pretty decent margins in cytopathology. We you know we're very lean. We set it up very much in a modular way. Digital will even increase our profitability more because we don't have the carrier costs and the staff organizing the logistics of the slides. So is it a 90% gross margin business? No, it's not. But we're looking at it being 30s into 40s gross margin, which I think is pretty solid for a lab services business. And I think another thing maybe we should point out, I didn't say it before, was we're focused more on the higher complexity cases, which then generate more revenue because it takes more time to process that case. So our pathologists are very much geared toward the higher complexity cases, which tend to get outsourced out to people like Source. So our pricing and our model is a bit different than just a standard NHS lab, so to speak.
A number of biotech players are bringing AI into cancer diagnostics. How does your solution compare? And do you have patents?
We don't have patents. If we had patents, it would be Philips. We're a lab services provider. We're sort of technology agnostic. If someone comes up with a better process, we would take a look at it. I think AI is going to be great for cancer diagnostics, and what I think the message is there's too much demand to meet supply right now. That's why it's being outsourced, and there's the wait lines. You've obviously got this backlog. If you bring in AI, that's only good news for patients because it means those base cases can get screened out, and then the more complex cases can actually get more attention and care to improve the care that's being given.
Oxford Nanopore is gearing up for a major float, which will take that business to a different level. What implications or opportunities, if any, does that have for you?
Well, we're working with Oxford Nanopore closely when we call on customers together when they need a lab services partner. We are their lab services provider when they need one. We've been into the DHSC with them. We've been into other major customers with them. So if they do well, we're assuming it'll benefit us as well. Rising tides lift all ships, so to speak.
Next one, infectious disease testing is getting incredibly crowded. What's your strategy to beat the competition? If possible, share any quantitative comparatives.
I'm not sure what you mean by getting competitive. There are a lot of different types of testing offerings out there. A lot of them are these rapid antigen tests, which aren't that good, quite frankly. We are one of the few accredited suppliers of PCR testing. There are others, but Eurofins is out there. You've got some other ones, but we are one of the few that has the capacity to deliver significant volumes of testing for some of our larger customers. So we're keeping abreast of the market. There is a bit of price pressure, but we're a premium provider, so we're okay to manage that. We've got better pricing from our suppliers, so we're still looking at maintaining our gross margin the way we did prior year, with just based on even volume, we could even do better.
Okay, next one, and this might be the last one. Will the current LF and PCR tests detect any variant, or are they unique to each variant?
You're talking lateral. I think there's two things: lateral flow and PCR. PCR can detect COVID just because it's inherent in what PCR technology can do. The lateral flows, I'm assuming, would do the same thing. It's more about the vaccine maybe not being able to treat the variant. So we're not seeing an issue with variants, although the government is very big on testing positives to make sure they're keeping track of the new variants coming in. So that's I think that's an increasingly important part of what we're going to be offering.